The story of Moses passing leadership to Joshua is a significant moment in the Bible, marking the transition of leadership for the Israelites as they prepare to enter the Promised Land. The account can be found in several passages, primarily in the books of Numbers 27, Deuteronomy 31, and Joshua 1. Here's the story in detail. The journey leading to this transition began earlier when Moses disobeyed God during an incident at Meribah. The Israelites were in the wilderness, thirsty and complaining about the lack of water. God commanded Moses to speak to a rock so that water would flow from it. However, Moses, frustrated with the people, struck the rock twice with his staff instead of speaking to it as God instructed. Because of this disobedience and lack of trust in God before the people, the Lord told Moses and Aaron that they would not enter the Promised Land. Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them. This marked the beginning of Moses' understanding that his leadership role would soon come to an end and he would not lead the people into Canaan. As Moses neared the end of his life, God instructed him to appoint a successor. The choice was Joshua, the son of Nun. Joshua had long been a faithful servant, warrior, and aide to Moses. He was one of the 12 spies sent to scout out the land of Canaan, and along with Caleb was one of the only two who had confidence that God would give Israel victory over the inhabitants. In Numbers 27:18-23, God tells Moses, "Take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the spirit of leadership, and lay your hand on him. Have him stand before Eleazar, the priest, and the entire assembly, and commission him in their presence." God chose Joshua because of his faithfulness, courage, and leadership abilities. He had already demonstrated a strong commitment to God and to the welfare of the Israelites. This public commissioning was meant to show the people that God had chosen Joshua to take Moses' place. Before the transition took place, Moses gave a final speech to the people of Israel, reminding them of God's faithfulness and urging them to follow God's laws as they entered the Promised Land. This is detailed in Deuteronomy 31. Moses reminded them that although he would not be leading them into the land, God would go before them and he would ensure their victory. Moses also encouraged Joshua directly, speaking words of strength and courage over him. "Be strong and courageous, for you must go with these people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged." In obedience to God's command, Moses brought Joshua before Eleazar the priest and the entire assembly of Israel. This public event was important because it ensured that the Israelites recognized Joshua as their new leader under God's authority. In front of everyone, Moses laid his hands on Joshua, symbolizing the transfer of leadership and God's blessing. The act of laying hands on Joshua was not just ceremonial, it was a significant spiritual movement in which God imparted his wisdom, strength, and authority to Joshua through Moses. The Bible says that Joshua was full of the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. After this commissioning, Moses went up to Mount Nebo, where God showed him the promised land from a distance. Though Moses would not enter the land, God graciously allowed him to see it before he died. Moses died at the age of 120, and the Bible says that his eyes were not weak nor his strength gone, showing that his life had been sustained by God until his final moment. The Israelites mourned Moses' death for 30 days, but they knew that Joshua was now their leader. After this period of mourning, Joshua began his role as the leader of Israel, and God confirmed his promise to be with Joshua, just as he had been with Moses. In Joshua 1:1-9, God speaks directly to Joshua. "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them." Joshua proved to be a capable leader, following God's instructions with precision. His first major act as leader was the miraculous crossing of the Jordan River, which echoed Moses' parting of the sea. This event confirmed Joshua's leadership in the eyes of the people, as they saw that God's presence was with him just as it had been with Moses. Joshua then led the Israelites in the conquest of the Promised Land, including the famous Battle of Jericho, where the walls fell after the Israelites marched around them in obedience to God's command. Throughout his leadership, Joshua demonstrated the courage, wisdom, and faithfulness that Moses and God had recognized in him. This transition from Moses to Joshua was more than just a change in leadership. It represented the continuation of God's covenant with his people. Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt and through the wilderness, but it was Joshua's role to bring them into the land of promise. It also highlighted a key theme in the Bible, that God's plans are greater than any one person. Even though Moses had been an extraordinary leader, God's purposes would continue through Joshua and subsequent generations. The transition also emphasized the importance of courage and obedience in the face of challenges. Joshua was often reminded by God to be strong and courageous, words that would guide him as he led the Israelites through numerous battles and into the fulfillment of God's promises. This is a powerful reminder that while human leaders come and go, God remains faithful to his promises, guiding his people through every stage of their journey.